Hey everyone, this is Justin the therapist here, and today I'd like to talk about something a little darker. I'd like to talk about sexual abuse. Now, I am part of the Coptic community, and in our community, there's been a lot of talk recently about sexual abuse. So I figured I'd share some thoughts, some of my own opinions about sexual abuse. Now, again, I'm not the expert on sexual abuse, and these, of course, are just my own opinions, so take that with a grain of salt. And whether you're part of the Coptic community or not, this is relevant for anyone because sexual abuse is rampant in every culture, in every country. So, the first thing that I think people need to learn about sexual abuse is that sexual abuse is not about sex. Sex is a wonderful thing. Sex shouldn't be vilified just because of sexual assault. The other thing is that sexual abuse is about power and control. It's not about lack of self-control, it's about power and control. It's about using your power to control someone to do some sort of sexual act with them without their consent, without them wanting to. And that's what abuse is about in general. Any kind of abuse is about power and control. And sexual assault just happens to be about sex. So, how can we as a society, as a culture, prevent sexual abuse? Well, there are many things that you can do. Now, I remember growing up, I was told that, girls need to dress modestly. They need to cover up and not look overly sexual or sexy or whatever. Now, I want to talk about that. Covering up, dressing modestly doesn't work. It's not a good way to prevent sexual abuse. So there's evidence against this. The evidence is that sexual abuse happens to young children that are not dressing sexually because they really can't. They're not very sexual beings. And sexual abuse happens to boys and it happens to men, and not just women. So it's not about girls, covering up and dressing modestly. And sexual assault happens to girls and women that are dressed modestly, that are covered up. Sexual assault happens in countries where most women dress very conservatively and really cover up. So there is evidence that dressing modestly does not reduce sexual assault. But aside from the evidence, there are a lot of implications in saying that women should cover up to avoid sexual abuse. Implications that are bad. First of all, saying that women should cover up puts blame on the victim. It says that if you happen to look sexy or attractive or whatever, then it's your fault that another person, likely a man, assaulted you. That is just bogus. That removes any fault or wrongdoing on the person who committed sexual assault. I'm going to say man because most of the time it happens to be men who do sexual abuse, but there are in fact women and others who do sexual abuse. So it removes any of the wrongdoing, any of the accountability on the man who committed the sexual abuse. It says that, if a woman is dressed provocatively or whatever, then it's her fault and it's not the man's fault. Because the other implication is it's saying that guys are these, animals that have no level of self-control. They're just these beasts that you need to control them. So it unfairly puts all the self-control and the self-limitations on women and nothing on men. Men are just kind of like, they don't have a mind of their own. And at the same time, another implication is that when you tell girls to dress modestly to avoid sexual abuse, you are implying that the girls that don't happen to dress modestly, it's okay that they get sexually abused. And that's not okay. It's not okay. If you were raised to dress modestly, that doesn't mean that if you were raised to dress more liberally, then you deserve to be sexually abused. Absolutely not. And the worst thing is that it teaches boys and girls to have an unhealthy relationship with sexuality. It teaches boys that girls are objects that you need to respond, or you can respond with a lack of inhibition towards girls if they're dressed a certain way, and that they should be treated with disrespect, and you don't need to care about their consent if they're dressed a certain way. And it teaches girls to have an unhealthy relationship with the way they look, with their own bodies. It teaches girls to have this inner turmoil of like, if I look a certain way, then that if I look beautiful, then that will be a source of judgment and shame and even abuse. So I should hide my own sexuality, hide my own beauty. And that creates a lot of inner conflict. I've worked with a lot of individuals, a lot of women who, once they're married, they have a hard time being sexual at all because there's this shame, this guilt about sexuality in general. So it's so important to have a healthy relationship with sexuality. Our bodies are beautiful, and sex is a beautiful thing. It's something that should be embraced. I'm not saying, we should go all out and at any moment and any time. Of course, healthy boundaries are important in society. But by putting blame and stigma on looking attractive, that is very unhealthy. And it does take away from any accountability on the side of men. So what can we do to prevent sexual abuse? Well, we definitely need to teach boys that consent is everything. Be respectful. When someone says no, it means no. And if someone is hesitating, that's also a no. Consent should be something that is enthusiastic, should be something that is unforced. It needs to be ongoing. Someone can remove their consent as well. Boundaries are incredibly important. And we also need to teach that sex is a beautiful thing and it's a consensual thing. And we also, as parents, as leaders, we set the precedent with how we treat children. And this doesn't have to do with sex because, again, abuse isn't about sex. But when we are parents, when we are teachers, we need to respect children's autonomy, children's bodily autonomy, and not bully our kids into submission, because we teach that when we do that, we teach that we can use our power as bigger persons, as adults, as leaders, that we can use our power to control people. And that's what I'm saying. It's all about power and control. If we teach that we respect you as a young person, as a child, we respect your power to make decisions, then that sets a precedent that when they grow up, they will respect others with less power to make their own decisions. And of course, when someone talks about sexual abuse, that they are a victim, it's so important to believe them. The people are often skeptical when someone says that a high-profile person, such as a priest or a politician or a boss or whatever, sexually assaulted them. Because it's like, how can such a person that we think so highly of do something so atrocious? But the reality is that there's about 2% of all reported cases of sexual assault that are actually false accusations. 2%. So are we going to scrutinize and shame every person that is brave enough to come out and talk about sexual abuse just because 2% of them may be false accusations? I don't think that that's healthy at all. That puts so much mental anguish and shame and pain on the people who are courageous enough to come out. There's already so much stigma when it comes to expressing that sexual assault happened. And on top of that, most people who are sexually abused never even speak up. So that false accusation rate is probably even smaller. And finally, therapy can be very helpful. So if you or you know someone that has been sexually abused, please don't hesitate to reach out to a therapist. Of course, this is something that I work with a lot. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to your local therapist or a therapist that you know or trust. Therapy can be tremendously helpful to heal with trauma. And if you're looking for a therapist and you know me personally, I'm happy to help you find someone that could be helpful for you. So that's it. I hope that this video was helpful. Please feel free to, ask any questions that you may have. I'm happy to answer them. All right, take care.